think all of our speakers have joined and we I think we're ready to go. But let me just check with my colleague Leo to make sure that everything is all set. We are recording this, live streaming it also on YouTube. So Leo, is all that set up?
The recording has started, and I believe YouTube. Yeah, Lindsay just confirmed that YouTube's
All right,
connected.
good. Well, that's a sign that we are ready to move, and it is 12 sharp. And I want to welcome you all to this webinar. This is the second one we've done this year, celebrating some of the great projects that we've done through our TLC program and our Regional Roadway Safety Program. Before we get started, I want to just make a few housekeeping announcements. We're going to be recording this webinar today, and we'll be posting that along with the slides so you can go back and get more information. We also have a new database. I'll talk about that in a minute, but if you want to get the actual full reports for any of these projects, they are more accessible than ever. The webinar is available for one AICP credit from the American Planning Association. You can go to the website and search and record those credits. Closed captioning is available. There's a button on WebEx that you can use, so hopefully if you need that, you can find it. Just a general comment, today's presentations are going to be fast-paced and high-level. So if attendees want to dig deeper, we encourage you to have a look at the project reports or contact the speakers, but just you can always follow up with me. If we have time at the end, we're going to take questions and answers, so you can add your questions to the Q&A box in WebEx, and we'll keep track of those. If we run out of time, we'll compile answers to the questions and forward an email to participants with follow-up. And so I think we're ready to get started. We have a pretty tight agenda, and I'm getting a message that the YouTube is getting funky, but I think we're still ready to go. So I'm going to give my opening presentation. You can see the list of speakers up there right now, and this is following a somewhat unusual format. We've done this once before, the pecha kucha format, and so I'm sort of doing the little test run here. Leo, are you ready to get me started?
Yep, the presentation should go up in a few seconds.
Okay, here goes. Hi, I want to welcome you all. I'm John Swanson. I'm a transportation planner, and I work for the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board here at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. And we are absolutely delighted that you've decided to join us today to hear about some recent projects that promote vibrant communities, active transportation, and safer streets. We're going to be talking about the TLC program, as many of you are familiar with that program, but also a couple of newer programs, the Regional Roadway Safety Program and the Transit Within Reach program. The session is going to be using a format called pecha kucha, which is Japanese for chit chat. The format is a little bit like a conveyor belt, and it's a little nerve-wracking. Each speaker has 20 slides, and each slide will automatically advance after 20 seconds. So my presentation is using that pecha kucha format right now. This is the second time we've done it. It's fun, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking, as I said, but it definitely keeps things moving. So getting started with our programs. The TLC program was started in 2007. We have funded 177 projects until now. We have 10 that are going on currently. And as a whole, we think they've made the region a better place, more livable, more walkable, more multimodal, and they've helped local communities in countless ways. The program has its origins in regional planning. We're a regional planning organization, and 20 years ago, we were looking at big picture questions for metropolitan Washington. What if more development was concentrated and was mixed use? What if we built more transit and sidewalks and bike paths? Our analysis found that large-scale changes like those could make travel conditions better, but as many of you who are planners know, when we spoke to the public about these ideas, they had very practical concerns. They understand the broad benefits of smart growth, but they, told us the devil's in the detail. They reminded us that Mixed-use developments need to be walkable. Transit needs to serve community needs. Biking needs to feel safe. We know that a lot of great local planning is happening at the local level. And we also saw that planners need a little extra boost to make good projects even better, or to explore innovative ideas or move important but non-urgent work off of the back burner. So thus was born in 2007 the Transportation Land Use Connections Program. We use a very simple model. These are consultant-led projects. They are quick turnaround, 6 to 8 months, and really pretty small, up to $80,000. And we fund planning or design. A few years ago, we set up a sister program to TLC, the Regional Roadway Safety Program. It really uses the same model, and we're going to be hearing about one of those projects later on in the presentations. We hire consultants to do planning or preliminary engineering work. And again, the goal here is to plan projects that are going to make a real impact in people's lives. And when it comes to safety, that is really a pressing concern. I think a lot of us know that safety trends have not been going in the right direction in recent years. Fatal crashes on our roadways have increased each year since 2015. And this was a reversal from the decline that we'd seen between 2005 and 2013. And this is a national trend, not just a local trend. A few years ago, we funded and conducted a regional study that identified strategies to reduce fatalities and injuries. And based on those strategies, we established the Regional Roadway Safety Program to fund short-term projects to make our roads safer, particularly for people who walk and bike. So in the past few years, we funded 22 projects that really take very practical steps, like you can see in the picture here, planning for infrastructure improvements for intersections, sidewalks, lighting, signage, designing new guidelines and standards at the jurisdictional level, conducting safety audits, and analyzing crash data. And finally, I'm going to tell you just a bit about a third program, the newest, Transit Within Reach, which we just set up a couple of years ago. The idea for this one is simple. In principle, in this region, trains and buses should be within reach for lots of people because more than half of the region's job growth over the next decade is expected to be within a quarter mile of high capacity transit. And yet, even where transit is physically close, it's often not within reach if you walk or you bike. Sidewalks are missing, crosswalks are unsafe, trails and paths are yet to be built or inadequate. So the Transit Within Reach program was set up to fund preliminary engineering or design for pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And again, we're using the same model of technical assistance that we use for TLC. Our board just approved 3 new projects, and you can check those out on our website. So as you can see, these programs fund local projects, but I really want to emphasize that these are regional programs. That's why we're hosting this webinar. We want to share information, and that's why we have developed this awesome new database, which has just gone live in the last week or so, where you can look at all of these projects. You can search by primary topic and download the reports and really dig deep. I also finally want to mention that we have an important announcement. Every year we do this solicitation for applications for the TLC program and the Regional Roadway Safety Program. We're combining those applications processes again this year. It's going to be in January and February. There's an abstract opportunity if you want to try out an idea. So if you have any questions, you can contact me, or you can contact Janie Nam, who runs the Regional Roadway Safety Program, and we will be happy to help you move forward with some great local planning. And in this program now, we're going to be hearing about a number of examples. And so that concludes my presentation. And the next person, or the first speaker actually on the list, is Brian Barnett Woods from Rockville. Brian has been doing some awesome work along with everyone in Rockville to sort of make it a more livable, walkable, bikeable community. And last year we funded a very specific project, and they're already thinking about implementation of this. So this is a classic TLC kind of project, and we're happy to sort of kick off the show with Brian. Brian, are you ready? And Leo, are you ready to get Brian's presentation started?
I'm ready.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Barnett Woods, a principal transportation planner with the City of Rockville. I'm also the city's pedestrian bicycle coordinator and Vision Zero coordinator. I'm here to talk about our TLC project, the Fleet and Rural Complete Streets. So let's begin. How did we choose this project? This project is close to town center and the Rockville Metro Rail Station. It's within an equity emphasis area and a high capacity transit walkshed. You can see the streets in purple, Fleet and Monroe. They connect to the Metro, a future BRT stop, the County Executive Building, Richard Montgomery High School, Mount Vernon Park, Rockville City Hall, and a trail that connects to the Carl Henn Millennium Trail. So this is really great for multimodal access. The green and blue dots here show crashes that occurred between 2017 and 2021. There wasn't a fatal crash, but there is certainly room for improvement for all modes. Fleet Monroe regularly receives service requests from the public related to motorists not yielding and pedestrian and speeding from pedestrians. So adding complete streets has a safety benefit as well. What are our project goals? First, what complete streets improvements can be made? And we want to make sure they're made and it's a functioning transportation network. And if that's possible, what will they look like? And this leads to two straightforward deliverables. The first is a traffic impact analysis, which you can see on the right. If we plan to implement any complete streets improvements, how will it impact the roadway? Will intersections fail? The second is, what are the conceptual plans for alternatives? What would the project look like on the street? Both are important. We need to understand traffic for public buy-in. We need the concept plans because they'll show us how much road space we need. So for the analysis, we looked at turning movement counts, pedestrian counts, bicycle counts, right-of-way availability, sidewalk, roadway lane widths, vehicle delay, queue lengths, all of it. It turns out that there's additional capacity along these roadways. We also looked at on-street parking, and there is some street parking on both streets that would be impacted. So what do we find? The biggest issue here, right-of-way constraints, are really going to limit what we can do. The city doesn't have the ability to obtain more right-of-way, and the travel lanes are only 11, 12 feet wide, so not a lot of extra space to play with. Good thing there's extra roadway capacity, because this means the best way to make improvements is to repurpose a motor vehicle lane. And how do we do that? The first option is a bicycle path that's up on the curb. This is more like what we think of a shared use path, and you can see actually in the little picture as a person and a bicyclist. But keep in mind, this pathway is in addition to the sidewalk. It's bidirectional and it would run alongside the south side of Fleet and west side of Monroe. The other alternative is a bidirectional cycle track. This is similar to some of the bike lanes they have in DC. Like the path, it would be on the same sides of Fleet and Monroe, but it's slightly wider and it's within the curb to curb on the street. So this is an on-street facility, which means it's going to need intersection differences in signals to help advance those bicycle movements. These proposals are similar. The right-of-way constraint is real, and there isn't enough space to provide protected lanes on each side of the street, which might be the preferable option. A standard striped bike lane could fit, but it wouldn't address bicycle safety needs. So here, the green is what it looks like if we were to repurpose a lane. The blue is where an extended and at-level bus stop would be. But the projects do differ at some key points. First is cost. A new path is more than double a cycle track. Second, a bike path would impact more driveway aprons and drainage inlets. And then lastly, the path option would have less complicated signals at the intersections than the cycle track would. On top of these options, there's a subset of options for the northern end of Monroe Street, which we see here. There's very low traffic on this street, so there's an option to make this section one way. This would allow for 5 parking spaces to remain, which you can see on the right. Alternatively, we can remove the parking lane and keep the two-way traffic. What about the other parking though? There are 7 parking spaces on the south side of Fleet Street near the high school. These are going to be removed in both alternatives. You can see 2 cars parked in the lower picture there, but the remainder of the parking on the upper side of the street is available, so it won't be difficult to find those spaces for those 2 cars. There are other issues as well. The Monroe-Jefferson intersection on the left will impact whatever happens to operations the intersection 1 block up. There are existing driveways on both streets, shown in the middle, and this may complicate entry and exit for those properties. Lastly, on the right is the start of the project, and we want to make sure we have a clean transition into this bicycle facility. So we coordinate with other agencies, and this is important because we want everyone to be on the same page, and since the city can't modify non-city intersections, we need their concurrence. We work with Montgomery County Department of Transportation Ride-On, which is their transit service, and the State Highway Administration, and they own the Monroe-Jefferson intersection. So State Highway doesn't yet have approval for a bicycle traffic signal, so we need a more complicated signal phasing to advance bicyclists. There are options, but we really do need to take a deeper dive to figure it out. Ride-On, the bus service, they request that all bus stops be wide, at-level bus stops so that both doors can be accessed and that bicyclists yield to pedestrians. Then we took this to the public. We hosted meetings with the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy, Bicycle Advisory, and Transportation Mobility Commissions. Some key comments. The bicyclists prefer the bike path option. Pedestrians noted they wanted more concrete space at intersections, which you can see in the bottom right, for waiting for people. And then ultimately, the chosen alternative is the shared use path. This creates more separation for users from automobiles. It can simplify crossing movements at the intersection, and it has a better connection into the high school, and it's preferred by the community. So now that we have a preferred alternative, what's next? With the support of MWCOG, we were awarded funds for the FY24 Transportation Alternatives Program to undertake 30% design. This project, the 30%, will prepare preliminary design plans. It'll look at that East Jefferson and Monroe Street intersection and put together a much more detailed cost estimate. This is all information we're going to need if we want to move this project to future design and implementation. In all, this project will put the metro station, the bus facilities, the future BRT closer to town center, county offices, residents, on a high school. It's going to leverage surrounding land uses to create a better multimodal transportation infrastructure. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Brian. Excellent. We're gonna actually hold questions to the end. Keep things moving. That was a really great sort of, I think, intro to the work you're doing in Rockville and also to the TLC program, the Regional Roadway Safety Program. This is a really sort of a very clear example of a very typical project that we do to sort of build vibrant communities and really sort of leverage, as you said, a lot of other work that's going on out there. So we're going to move now to a less typical project. You know, every year or so we fund one or two really innovative projects, and I think the next one is a really great example of that. It's looking at micromobility and a micro hub, and looking at freight particularly. And this is something that came to us, and we were, you know, sort of a little bit out of our sort of normal bailiwick, but I'm certainly very excited to fund this. And we're joined by Florence Dwyer today, who's going to be talking about the delivery microhub feasibility study in the District of Columbia. Florence, you ready to go?
I'm all ready.
All right, Florence, go.
Thanks. Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. I am Florence Dwyer. I'm a transportation planner at the District Department of Transportation, working within the freight program. And today I'll be discussing the delivery microhub feasibility study that we conducted. So first, I just want to give kind of an overview of the project and the goals and approach. So the overall purpose of this project is to address the impacts of delivery activities, including but not limited to things like traffic volume, roadway congestion, curbside conflicts, safety issues, emissions impacts, etc. And this image on the screen shows a common occurrence in the district of delivery vehicles double parking. So our approach to this problem in this project was to develop criteria for defining a feasible service area and criteria for siting a delivery microhub, and creating a framework for utilizing sustainable last mile delivery modes such as hand carts, e-bikes, etc. So now that we have the overview, you might be asking, what even is a microhub? So a microhub is a small-scale urban logistics facility where goods are bundled at a location between a major suburban warehouse and the final delivery destination. Other characteristics of microhubs. So microhubs serve a limited spatial range, typically no more than 6 square miles. And they serve high-density areas where delivery activities are difficult because of limited curb space for large vehicles, limited access on streets, and restricted traffic conditions. They also intend to reduce the number of vehicle trips by allowing for this shift to low emission or no emission vehicles or modes, like we said before, either e-bikes, cargo bikes, hand carts, etc. And additionally, they can be used by one carrier or operator or designed to allow a range of multi-carrier consolidation efforts. So now our study set out to answer the question, what makes a good microhub location? And we determined that overall, the siting analysis, we should consider demand, access, and equity. So a good microhub location has a large demand for packages and easier access for transshipment from trucks and access for last mile modes such as bikes and walkers. And these next few slides show maps from the siting analysis. This first one shows the composite delivery demand analysis scores, which estimates the frequency and quantity of delivery requests based on factors of population density, employment density, and housing unit density. This composite delivery access analysis score estimates the ease of how deliveries could flow in and out of certain areas of the city. So because a microhub is meant to have an inflow of larger vehicles bringing parcels to the hub and an outflow of smaller vehicles picking up the parcels at the hub and delivering them to their final destination, the hub must be located where it's both A, convenient for trucks and large vehicles to drive, and B, safe and convenient for smaller vehicles to finish the delivery. So this composite service area score combined both those access and demand variables to show where the highest demand score corresponds with the highest access score, and that's the areas shown in purple there. And then finally, we have our equity map. We decided equity is also important to consider in the site selection process for this project. This equity consideration analysis shows area of the city identified as high on the transportation needs index by MoveDC, with high instances of asthma and reported high concentrations of diesel particulate matter. So now on to some of our findings from this study. One was that microhubs work best for deliveries that are non-perishable, small in size and weight, and have a short last mile delivery trip. So because of this, parcel deliveries were determined to be the best use case for a microhub in the district. Another finding from our consultation with stakeholders and best practice research was that delivery companies do not want to share microhub space. They want their own dedicated space. Additionally, we found that in an ideal world, a microhub would be around 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. This would give adequate space for loading and unloading of a truck or van, vehicle parking and battery charging, and employee amenities like restrooms, locker rooms, a kitchen area, office space, things like that, and other storage needs. And then kind of diving into our next steps. So throughout this fall, we're continuing our efforts to select a site for the microhub and create an operational framework for this pilot. So this feasibility study was this TLC grant. We got additional grant funding to kind of try to implement this pilot. So now we're hoping to go through any necessary permitting processes and onboard an operator this fall and into the winter. And our goal is implementation of a pilot in early 2024. And from this feasibility study, we determined that an underutilized parking lot would likely be the best space for a microhub pilot. And that's where we're currently focusing our efforts in coordination with stakeholders like the bids and delivery companies. And that is it for this brief presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions afterwards.
Thanks, Florence. That's very exciting, and yeah, we're super pleased also that you're continuing the work, that you're able to leverage additional grant funding. So starting off with TLC and continuing. So I love that kind of creative continuation. Moving from a very urban project to a park-oriented project. We're next going to hear from Claire Worstel from Prince George's County. Is going to be talking about the multimodal upgrades to Walker Mill Road, which is very much integrated with some master planning for the regional park, the Walker Mill Regional Park out there. This is the project that we're going to be featuring today that is funded through the regional roadway safety program. So with visitors anticipated at that park, safety concerns were really prominent, and the new regional roadway safety program gave a really great opportunity to sort of look at and to plan for some upgrades out there. So Claire, are you ready to go?
I am.
Okay, Leah, let's go.
All right, good morning. My name is Claire Worstel. I'm the Capital Budget Manager for the Department of Parks and Recreation in Prince George's County. In 2022, we received a grant through the Regional Roadway Safety Program to work with VHB and CH Planning on multimodal improvements to Walker Mill Road. Walker Mill Regional Park is one of 4 existing regional parks in our system. We completed a master park development plan for Walker Mill in 2022. Walker Mill is the only regional park located inside the Beltway. It's 504 acres, divided roughly in half by Walker Mill Road, and a master plan for the south side of the park was completed in 2004, and that side's undergone a multi-million-dollar renovation over the past 10 years. This master park development plan largely focused on the undeveloped north side of the park. The only existing amenities on the north side are the historic Concord Manor House and a small community garden. The plan divided the park into activation zones and identified Walker Mill Road as its own activation area, as it divides the park and is the only major access into the park for cars, bicyclists, and pedestrians. The Concord Museum will share the history of the park as the plantation, as well as the enslaved who lived there and worked on the property. In order to advertise and enjoy this historic setting, slower speeds, ornamental fencing, and gateway signage are ideal elements along a roadway. A comfortable walking environment is also important, as only accessible parking will be provided on site. All other parking will be located away from the historic property. The plan is to maintain the historic uses and viewshed by building upon a historic agrarian use for the land and created both a community garden and an urban ag zone. This will generate additional traffic to the park on weekends for the envisioned farmers market. And the western zone will probably be the most active part of the north, where we envision a visitor center, ample parking, botanical gardens, large pavilions, and spaces for entertaining and play. This is the area that will see the most traffic to the north coming through its roadway entrance. Finally, the robust trail system is what ties all of this together. There are approximately 9 miles of new trail that will take users through various sections of the park and connect to surrounding communities. The trail also takes advantage of the Pepco easement, which has some ideal terrain for mountain biking, as well as the Chesapeake Beach Rail Trail. This makes it even more important for residents to be able to access this park safely by bicycle and on foot. Walker Mill Road was built for vehicular traffic with limited sidewalks and an unprotected bike lane and cars that travel at very high speeds. As we activate the north side of the park, it'll become common for visitors to want to walk from the active side on the south to the more passive and reflective uses on the north. Bicycle and pedestrian safety is essential for this park's long-term success. The plan envisioned a gateway to alert drivers that they're entering a park setting. Additional traffic calming measures like hawk signals, protected bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, and roundabouts were also recommended. But we needed a skilled team of experts to help us take this key component of the park to the next level and really understand the constructability of these recommendations. So the team broke their recommendations into short-term and long-term recommendations. Things like roundabouts, traffic signals take a long time to construct, and we need solutions that we can implement more immediately while waiting for more substantial funding. They also included information on coordination complexity, some require multiple entities to implement, and the stakeholders who will need to be involved. Short-term recommendations included the installation of additional signage and markings, creation of protected on-street multi-use paths, gateway signage to alert vehicular drivers that they're entering a park setting, rapid flashing beacon for pedestrian crossings, high visibility crosswalks, and pedestrian scale lighting to enhance safety. This is a cross-section of the main entrance to the south side of the park. In the future, this will align with the main entrance to the north side as well, but in the short term, we can add protected on-street bike lane and create safe pedestrian crossing and a refuge area to access the path from the south side. With travel lanes narrowed to 11 feet in width to create the shared use path, additional width is available for widening the existing sidewalk on the bridge. As the sidewalk is elevated from the pavement, a temporary modular platform would be needed to create a wider multi-use path. And in addition, a barrier will be needed to separate the moving vehicles from the non-motorized users. This will help residents get from the commercial areas to Walker Mill Regional Park. We can then consider the long-term recommendations. These recommendations generally will require 5 years or more to implement because of the high cost, level of design and construction complexity, and level of coordination needed among various agencies. They include the installation of traffic signals, construction of 2 separate roundabouts, a right-in, right-out entrance, a separate pedestrian bridge to the east, off-street multi-use paths. The plan doesn't recommend a menu of solutions, but recommends that all of them be layered and implemented over time in order to create the best multimodal experience possible. This is a view of the west entrance, where the right-in, right-out entrances would be located. That's because the entrances that bookend this one are both roundabout entrances, allowing vehicles to turn around if necessary at those roundabouts. Then we have an example of a one single lane roundabout. Pedestrian crossings from the north and south would be located at these roundabouts where vehicles are forced to slow and not along those right in, right out entrances. The raised median area could also become tree lined, further enhancing the aesthetic of the park. And finally, a new multi-use path bridge is to be located to the north of the existing bridge, with users on the multi-use path directed to use the new bridge. The temporary platform on the existing bridge, as shown in the short term, would be removed. And this would essentially take users off of the roadway for the extent of the bridge and then back onto the roadway. Our next step in this process is to engage a design team to take the master plan for the entire north side to 30%, 60%, and then 90% design. As we do that, we'll begin to implement strategies that can be solely implemented by the department because the upgrades happen on our property. This might include gateway signage, building on and off street paths, adding pedestrian scale lighting, and then we'll work with DPW&T to identify costs for some of these improvements and identify which agency has responsibility to fund them. So thank you for attending the presentation today, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about the grant program or this project in particular.
Thanks, Claire. That's great. Really interesting and great how it's integrated with so much exciting kind of development work and great visuals too. So it's interesting. Claire's obviously a park planner, which is looking at things a little bit differently. So it's great to get that perspective in here. Next on our list is looking at Independence Avenue. Karen Shearhold from the National Capital Planning Commission, who did this project with DDOT, is going to be sharing some information about a corridor that I think all of us know, a sort of nationally famous kind of street. And I've been looking at ways in which it can be made more pedestrian, bicycle, transit friendly. So, Karen, are you ready to go?
Yep, ready to go.
Okay, let's take it away. Let's go.
Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Karen Shearhold. I'm an urban planner with the National Capital Planning Commission, or NCPC, and here to share our experience with the TLC program working on Independence Avenue Southwest Corridor Study. And when I say Independence Avenue, that's Independence Avenue between 3rd and 15th Street Southwest. So this was a collaborative effort formerly led by the District Department of Transportation in partnership with NCPC, with an additional funding contribution from the Smithsonian Institution. Kittleson and Associates was the selected consultant for the corridor study. So Independence Avenue is a vital east-west transit corridor adjacent to locally and nationally significant destinations. However, it can be a barrier between the National Mall and the Smithsonian Museums to the north and the commercial and residential developments to the south. It's also not very pedestrian friendly. So as Southwest DC continues to develop, new destinations are generating increased pedestrian and multimodal activity, and this was really a call to improve the streetscape function here, quality and connectivity between those key destinations to the north and south. So NCPC started doing some initial background work on Independence in 2019. Essentially an existing conditions report, and we held a few stakeholder workshops to identify some of the opportunities and challenges in the area. And with that base of understanding, DDOT and NCPC applied for TLC funding to support data collection as the first step. So these consultant services were to develop a corridor study that included collecting current multimodal transportation data, developing use and demand predictions, and developing 3 right-of-way scenarios. Objectives included identifying strategies to emphasize the avenue's unique character, ensure high-quality streetscape, and prioritize resiliency and sustainability, as well as safety and multimodal comfort and access. The study area is, again, I mentioned Independence Avenue Southwest between 15th and 3rd. That includes intersecting streets, basically a block north and south of the avenue. And then we also considered specific intersections and connections within a wider interest area for their impact and influence on Independence Avenue. So Kittleson started with an existing conditions analysis that used a synthesis of historic and current data to help inform this mid to hopefully post-COVID scenario that we're in. And regarding the pedestrian experience, they found that intersections are generally very long and there's not a lot of pedestrian refuge, and sidewalk widths are inconsistent, and there's several pinch points along the corridor. There's also a lot of barriers in the pedestrian clear zone due to construction, perimeter security, and sometimes vending, and a very high demand for curbside use here with tour buses, rideshare, pickup drop-off, and vending all competing for space. There are also currently no bike lanes, and due to a pretty meager tree canopy in places, there's not a lot of shade. And finally, it can be hard to navigate if you're not familiar with the area. There's no cohesive signage or wayfinding program. So Independence today is 8 lanes, 4 in each direction, and there's no bike lanes on this stretch. Sidewalks here average about 10 feet, and in some cases they are narrower. And many times the tree boxes and other streetscape elements are part of that area, which leaves even less room for a pedestrian clear zone. So Kittleson found that based on the data, Independence actually carries the load of a 4-lane roadway, meaning there's an opportunity to consider repurposing some of those existing travel lanes and reconfiguring the corridor's cross-section to prioritize non-motorized users, including biking, walking, using micromobility, and accessing transit. They also developed a toolkit of ideas that we could consider to make the avenue more pedestrian-friendly and safe. So with that in mind, they developed 3 general right-of-way scenarios. Each scenario proposed a reduction of 2 lanes, maintained or increased the tree canopy to have a consistent double row of trees on each side, and left room for a left turning lane. They also looked at accommodating those curbside uses and increasing green space and bike lanes. So one of the scenarios looked at enlarging the pedestrian area, again, keeping 2 through travel lanes, incorporating a flex zone that could accommodate pickup drop-off, the buses, the potentially bike share or vending, and again, maintaining a consistent double row of trees on both sides of the street. Another scenario looked at using that excess space and putting it into a landscape median that alternates with the left turning lane, and enlarging the pedestrian area at the sidewalks, again, with that double row of trees, and then a curbside flex zone. And then they did do a scenario that looked at adding a cycle track at the sidewalk grade, keeping 2 through travel lanes, and some flex zones with additional landscape space. The trade-off being here that a bike lane in that location would likely conflict with tour bus loading and vending. So this work is still in the very early stages, and since it's a district street, DDOT will be the entity that takes it beyond the feasibility stage. But for the next year, we're very excited to have the opportunity to further develop this study and start to engage stakeholders a little bit and build a case for future improvements. So last month, we kicked off a contract with Kittleson to do another year of study and expand our understanding of the block-by-block needs along Independence and test some of these right-of-way scenarios. And Smithsonian is also generously contributing funding to this effort. So this next phase of work will build on the TLC funded study and develop a deeper understanding of the corridor by conducting an initial public life review of the corridor to measure kind of how the street is used, identify, kind of really hone in on some of those curbside issues, including loading and delivery zones, rideshare, the tour buses, et cetera. And then further detailing the demand and flow data and analysis collected in the first study that'll help coordinate stakeholder priorities and start to establish a unified vision for the corridor and support for future improvements. So that is Independence Avenue, and I'm happy to follow up or answer any questions after. Thanks.
That's great and super exciting. I think looking forward to seeing that real change happening in the hopefully fairly near future there. So that was a DC project. Now we're moving to an outer jurisdiction, Prince William County, which has been doing a lot of really great planning work in a very large area with a lot of interesting challenges, but a lot of opportunities. And here to tell us about a really interesting project related to essentially a facility at a new parking garage, but so much more than a garage, is Ben Carbajal from Prince William County Department of Transportation. Ben, are you Ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right, Ben. Take it away.
Good afternoon, all. As John said, my name is Ben Carbajal, and I'm a senior transportation analyst with Prince William County's Department of Transportation. I would like to thank Will and his team at KFH for the wonderful job that they did on this study. The county wanted to construct a west lane reverse ramp off 9. Both projects are anticipated to be completed by the end of summer 2020. Are integral to facilitating transit-oriented development in the area. The garage project is currently under construction with crews working to finish the foundation before the end of this year. The project will provide several amenities to include being Omni Ride's transit hub for the region, free access to park, providing EV charging stations to include expansion upon need, elevators and vestibules, van accessible parking on all ground levels, bike racks, and other pedestrian facilities. The 95 Opitz project is constructing a south-facing ramp within the existing median on 95. We're excited about this project as it provides pedestrian improvements along the north side of Opitz Boulevard, safely reconnecting communities divided by 95. An integrated transportation system that provides mobility for all underpins the county's transportation vision. As population and commercial growth intensifies in the region, the county is committed to developing transit-oriented communities. This slide shows other notable areas in the study area to include the Centara Hospital campus, Potomac Mills Mall, Potomac Town Center, and several schools. The study area includes several census tracts designated as an equity emphasis area while also being in an activity center. The demographics concerning this study that impact how we move forward with the recommended improvements I just do not have the time to go into each one, but based on the 2019 census data, there is an average population density of 3,100 people per square mile. The town center has a density between 5,000 to 10,000 people. 99% of the individuals that commute to the study area do not live within the study area. Furthermore, there is a significant population with limited or no access to a vehicle, making quality transit infrastructure essential. Understanding mobility safety is critical for the county to decide where to prioritize improvements. As you can see, from 2015 to 2022, there have been several accidents, including 2 fatalities along Opitz Boulevard and Dale Boulevard. Though most streets have sidewalks or shared use paths, there are gaps in connectivity, especially around Opitz Boulevard. As you can see, Opitz and Dale crossing 95 are very uncomfortable and recommended to avoid for cyclists. There are bus stops along Opitz to the east of the garage with only street access. With all the capital improvements occurring in the area, the county is actively coordinating with our partners to resolve these issues. This slide highlights existing pathways in solid green lines and pathway gaps illustrated by purple and blue dashes. These gaps are major hurdles needed to overcome to provide equitable access to these communities. VDOT's ramp project will resolve some of the issues along Opitz Boulevard. This is a similar map to the last one I showed you, but it dives deeper into the planned pedestrian improvements in the area. Outside of the garage and ramp projects mentioned earlier, the county has the Neabsco Mills widening project to the south and the Route 1 widening project to the east. Both projects provide necessary pedestrian facilities. KFH spent 2 months canvassing the area, surveying a total of 174 curb ramps, 99 crosswalk segments, and 129 pathway segments. Repairs and reconstruction of the existing pathways are required to meet ADA compliance standards. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, KFH provided a tiered ranking system to facilitate the prioritization process. Intersection improvements are needed throughout the study area to improve Safeway for all roadway users. You can see some of the recommendations include traffic calming, speed reduction strategies, and improving visibility. County staff will coordinate with the property owners and VDOT to initiate these recommended improvements. Going forward with the project is not as direct as seeing an issue and solving it. County staff will be utilizing this study to best inform the district supervisors to receive buy-in from them before submitting project funding requests to our state and federal partners. Some programs that we will apply to in the future include VDOT's Transportation Alternatives Program, USDOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All, amongst others. If necessary, the county will support projects with local dollars. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. yeah, it's really great to see the focus on multimodal accessibility that Prince William County is pursuing, and also the fact that Prince William and our outer jurisdiction members really have to do these things somewhat differently than denser sort of inner jurisdictions, and we're really pleased to be supporting a couple of great projects in Prince William this year. So taking it back inside the Beltway and finishing off the program today is Alex Friedman from
Thanks, John.
Tacoma Park, who's going to be talking about a couple of projects. And they're both trail-related projects. Very excited because these are both moving toward implementation even as we speak. So, Alex, you ready?
I think so.
Okay, go.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Friedman. I'm the planner for the City of Tacoma Park, and I am excited to be talking about two projects that we were very lucky to receive funding for, or technical assistance for, in this last round of TLC grants. These include a stretch of the Metropolitan Branch Trail, for which the City of Tacoma Park manages about half a mile of, connecting it between the larger Met Branch Trail effort that eventually will extend from Union Station all the way up to Silver Spring, and the New Ave Bikeway Section D, which is the latest section connecting to the district, for about a half mile of off-street bikeway. So the MBT, as I just mentioned, we managed as a city about a half a mile. It was one of the first sections built of the Metropolitan Branch Trail. And because of that, it's also not doing so great as far as conditions are concerned. The location of our route is visible in yellow on this map. It connects between two sections that are already in progress. Montgomery County is working on a section that will connect from our border up to the Silver Spring Transit Station, and DDOT is working on a section that will connect from our border down to the Fort Totten Metro. A big piece of our effort in this project was focused on innovating on engagement strategies. These included informational public meeting, we did an on-site community walk, and we tried this new yard sign campaign that featured QR codes to an online survey. What we heard back from people was, as you can sort of see here, the trail is narrower than people feel comfortable with, the pavement condition is poor, the lighting is poor, and this split rail fence is starting to fall apart. So what was proposed in the preliminary designs that was developed out of this was, broadly speaking, a widening of the trail to a modern standard that aligned with Montgomery County's design standards, new pedestrian scale lighting, safer and more useful crossings that connect to the park across the street, as well as new striping and signage. And so what's next is that we're really excited that we were just awarded funding from the Maryland Department of Transportation Kim Lanphier Bikeway Connection Program to bring this design all the way up to 100% construction ready designs. The other project that we got funding for, or got support for, was the third section of the New Ave Bikeway, which is a bikeway that will extend from Tacoma Langley Crossroads down New Hampshire Avenue along our eastern border and connect to DC. However, this is a different bit than the previous sections, which were right on New Hampshire Avenue. We found that it made more sense to connect through the neighborhood at the bottom corner of our city to existing bike infrastructure at Kansas Avenue Northwest. So as you can see from this yellow route, we explored a couple options and chose the one that was the flattest and most direct, where bike riders were already using it. We focused a lot of the same strategies we tried for the MBT, we also used on this project, including this yard sign campaign that I was really excited to try out for the first time and invite multilingual residents to take a survey that would guide our process. Here's just a couple snapshots of the designs that came out of this. You can see here, this is the extension of the separated bike trail from the previous sections that are to the north of this project. And then it transitions on to the neighborhood streets, which we found through a number of counts to be quite low volume streets, also very narrow. And so for that reason, the infrastructure becomes rather a bit lighter and focuses more on road narrowing, expanding the sidewalk, and adding clearer signage so that it's easier to navigate as a bike rider. For this section, the other two sections of this trail are just about to hit 100% design, which we're really excited about. We're now seeking funding to continue the design work on this section with our hopes to pursue construction funding for this entire 1.5 mile project. So thank you so much for your time, and that's what I've got.
That's great. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's great to finish off with something that is, I think many of these projects actually are sort of just the momentum is going, and sort of you're going to be moving toward real implementation in the very near future. So it's all really great to see. We have about 9 minutes left for some questions and answers, and I see that people did put some questions in the chat. So if our panelists could bring on their cameras, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to actually throw out a sort of a general question from my end, really. If particularly this is a time when maybe some local governments, some of our members who are interested in pursuing TLC or the Roadway Safety Program grants are thinking about applications. Do you have any recommendations for them? Any lessons learned on your end? These are really small grants, very focused, quick turnaround. Anything that you would suggest, or maybe that you would have done differently if folks are considering applying for one of these projects? Maybe that's pretty open-ended, but
I can answer that one. So one of the things that we thought about is, we thought about the capabilities that we have in-house versus the capabilities that we don't. We really wanted to make sure that this was not just another planning exercise, because we had really done the planning exercise. We wanted something that was going to get us to the implementation step. And we knew that we weren't going to get enough money to get to like 30–60% design, but we were going to get that in-between step, which is what's constructible. We had some really high-level recommendations, and some of them we thought were not necessarily implementable. And this got us that next step of okay, these are the ones that are implementable. This is why. And now you can go straight to 30–60% design with an engineer. So making sure we kind of got the best bang for our buck.
Great. Thank you, Claire. That's very helpful.
I would also
suggestions. Yeah,
I would also add, if there are any jurisdictions who are interested in this program, first, it's a great program, so definitely go for it. Limiting the scope of the projects. When you're thinking about, so in my case, Complete Streets project, look at a few blocks, don't look at the entire corridor, because you can do a lot of really great stuff and make kind of strategic improvements. Identifying those cases with this program versus trying to cover everything and not having enough time to do it.
Great. Yeah, I'll just speak as someone who manages this program. That often is a challenge when we get a great idea, but it's just too big. We can't do this in $80,000. It probably needs $800,000 and just can't fund it. So, Alex.
Thanks. Something that I would recommend that we found in these projects and a couple past projects we've done too is that if you anticipate that a project is going to be controversial or needs a lot of extra engagement focus, that sort of, to Brian's point, focusing your scope in narrow enough that you don't run out of time, because it is a relatively short timeline once you start getting, once you get to the point of where you get to start working with the consulting team. And I think what helped us with these projects is that we had already been doing some of that background work related to other things in advance. So we were able to bring in resources that we already had rather than starting from scratch on some of it, which I think could have gotten messy and could have kind of derailed our timeline entirely.
Great. I'm going to move on to some of the questions in the chat. Some of them are super specific, so and though they're interesting nonetheless. If I don't get to all of them, if the panelists want to sort of respond, and we can also try to do some follow-up information on our website. But Florence, not surprisingly, you got a bunch of questions. I'll zero out in on a couple. Who would own a micro hub? I assume to be leased, but could you talk about ownership? And also, there was a question there about the location of it as it relates to air quality. An assumption that these would not be located in places where there are high levels of prevalence of asthma and people have problems with particulate matters. Comments there?
Yeah, so to the first question of kind of the ownership, certainly, whatever, let's say there's a parking lot, it's owned by someone else, but yeah, it would be kind of this lease thing. And, we see our role right now as just kind of as DDOT as kind of facilitating this, but we would not be managing the micro hub, whatever parcel delivery company that comes on board, they would be kind of managing the micro hub space and that aspect. And then in regards to that equity piece that I was talking about, so
yeah,
when I brought up the asthma and diesel particulate matter, those were metrics that we use to map out this equity analysis because we're trying to reduce the number of trucks on the road, right? And so we're seeing those were kind of some of the metrics that we already had data for that we could kind of most easily tie to like higher concentrations of trucks and seeing if we can have less trucks in that area, then maybe that would have those equity impacts on those things. So that was where that was coming from.
A bit of a follow-up question. I thought this was interesting. What's the business case? I don't know if you saw this question in the chat. I essentially I understood that the questioner was asking, compared to paid parking revenue, what would be the case for leasing it out to a micro hub?
That's a great question. We're still looking into that. I think there are some sites we've looked into and they're like, yeah, the parking revenue is great and they probably would not want to shift. But there are some places where, it's underutilized and there might be that opportunity. So we're still in that phase of kind of searching around for that.
Someone just asked broadly about NIMBYism, sort of, I guess, citizen objections. Alex already sort of spoke to this, but I guess I'm wondering, from your experience with these kinds of projects, are these good projects, TLC, roadway safety, to directly address head-on some questions related to community objections, or are these projects good opportunities for public participation, or is the sort of public input element sort of best left to planning activities that are conducted before or after? Do you have thoughts about that? Maybe not. Karen, do you have any thoughts about that in terms of community? I guess there's maybe not a community down there, but in terms of stakeholders and sort of, involvement in Independence Avenue.
Yeah, I think, in our timeline everyone's timeline is going to be different. And I think what we were looking at this process to do was give us data and basically give us like a baseline assumption of how we could reconfigure the road. So because we were partnering with DDOT and Smithsonian, that's a large quantity of our stakeholder group.
Yeah.
But we did at times throughout the process bring in Architect of the Capitol, GSA, the Southwest bid. And so there was a lot of communication, but we're still in a phase where this is a very internal discussion. And I think as things move forward, it definitely, I could see this process being part of a phase that would involve some public outreach. Kittleson did a fantastic job of kind of communicating. But for us, at least, it wasn't part of our timeline. And I think the more valuable component was the data. So I think it's really like, what are you trying to get out of it, and where is your focus?
Yeah. Any other thoughts about public participation before we close out?
I'll add that we had a very, very vocal community surrounding this park all through the master plan process. And they were the ones really, them and our park police, that alerted us to the serious concerns about crossing Walker Mill Road from one side to the other if you were going to activate the north side of the park. Yeah. And while they were very, it was challenging during the master planning process, everybody was on the same page with the roadway. Everybody just agreed with everything, was really excited, and they said, just tell us when it's going to be done, because we're on board with everything. So it was really great.
All right. Well, it is 1:01, and we have had a great smattering of presentations, a lot of good information. I've learned some stuff, and I really enjoy this format. We would appreciate any feedback that participants have, and whether or not we should be doing more of these. We would be planning to do one next year. Again, check out our database. You can dive deep into these projects, and please feel free to contact me or Jenny Nam about the projects that we're doing, that we've done. And if you have any ideas for future applications, we're really looking forward to a great new round of projects for FY 2025. So thank you very much. And I appreciate your participation and all the great planning work that I know many of you are engaged in throughout our region. So thank you.